Welcome to BW Healthcare World Thursday Thought Leaders with Harbinder Narula. One among many industries that has changed the way they operate after COVID is the diagnostics industry. One player that remained relevant and has adapted to the future of what the industry looks like is Metropolis Healthcare. Today we have Ameera Shah, the Managing Director of Metropolis Healthcare, a multinational chain of pathology centers. Let us speak to her about her journey and how the industry is shaping up with the disruptions happening in the diagnostics business in India. Welcome, Ameera, to BW Healthcare World. My first question to you is that your father started the Dr. Sushil Shah Labs, uh, and then you built that into Metropolis Healthcare. What has that role and that journey, and how has that nurtured you as a person that you are today?
Thanks, Harbinder, for having me on the show. Very happy to be here. And you guys are doing some great work and great content. Everything that's built as an institution builds over years. And really, it always takes multiple generations. It doesn't matter whether it's generations of the same family or whether it's generations of different people to really build great institutions. You look at the best educational institutions we have globally, healthcare, anything. So I think, the seedling was definitely planted by him in the way of him starting a good quality lab at South Bombay, bringing some of the most advanced tests at that time in 1980s to India, and really being a pioneer in his own way. In 2001, when I came back and I saw that he had this one lab in South Bombay, which was really stood for good quality, large specialized tests, I really felt it was an opportunity to build an institution out of it and make it something that was accessible to many more Indians beyond South Bombay, all across the country, and potentially other parts of the world. And that was really the dream and the vision, and that's how I started building it. So it's been about 21 years now. We've gone from one lab to where we are about 175, 180 labs, about 3,600 centers, not only India, but 5 countries in Africa. And while I'm always given the credit for representing the team, the most important part of that sentence is team. All the people, whether they are part of Metropolis today or not, who've contributed in building Metropolis to what it's today, I think are very much appreciated.
So, Ameera, when you came back and in 2001, you initiated the journey of, corporatizing a lab and build it into a chain that it is today. What were some of the challenges that you faced as an entrepreneur? Because, you were young, there was no business background except for running a lab. So, what would you term as the biggest life lesson that you have learned during this journey?
Honestly, you're absolutely right. Age played a very important factor because I was 21. And in healthcare, unless you're, salty and grey, nobody really gives you too much respect. Adding to that, female 20 years ago, even today, it's still, there are mindsets and conditioning around how you engage with women versus how you engage with men. There was the factor that I didn't have a medical degree, and therefore people had their own assumptions around that. So I think, the important thing I think for any entrepreneur, and I've seen this, is, we do something because we want to be different. We want to be the first to do something. We want to be the ones who have an impact. We want to plant our brand and stamp on something, right? That's what really motivates most entrepreneurs. Money was never a motivating factor for me, but the fact of making a difference was. The challenges were far and many. There was no blueprint to follow. There was no capital to invest. But what was there was a good quality lab with a profitability. Even if it was only 7 crores of revenue, 2, 3 crores of profit, that was there. And I think the important thing is to, one, focus on what you have versus don't have. And really say, look, how do I capitalize on my strengths rather than constantly thinking about what I could have and should have had. I think the second is all about grit and perseverance. Institutions are not built in a day. And I think anybody who tries to build them for ego, either I want to be the fastest. I want to be bigger than this XYZ. I want to teach this one a lesson. Whatever, stories people have in their minds. You don't build good institutions out of bad emotions. You build good institutions out of good emotions, of wanting to genuinely solve a problem in the world and genuinely wanting to impact people's lives in a positive manner. And I think if we follow that, then we'll end up building things in the right way for the long term. So my focus has always been about sustainable businesses, not going up fast and coming down fast, but everything about long term, and doing that with grit and perseverance and doing it the right way. Being fair, having the right reputation, doing things in a good way, I think is very important.
So, Ameera, I do a program called 200 Coffees. That's my personal initiative. And I've met a lot of people who are very, very successful today. But I've not yet come across any single person who has not been through challenges in life. So there are obviously speed bumps on the way to build an institution, and everybody faces these setbacks. How did you cope up with certain bad decisions, failures, setbacks, both personally and professionally? Would you want to share something about that?
I would say the first value system of grit, comes a lot from my parents, where, the way they brought us up was never about mollycoddling. It was never about, oh, you're my princess, I'll protect you, I'll keep you, carefully at home, I'll give you everything on a platter. It was never like that. I mean, there was, whatever they could give, and we grew up very middle class, upper middle class, but whatever they could give, they kept us very grounded and working hard for our things to earn by ourselves, which I really appreciate. But that meant that nothing is to be taken too seriously. You don't take a failure or a problem or a bad decision too seriously. It is not the end of the world. They taught us never to really care too much for what society said. Do what you want as long as you're following your inner conscience, your own moral compass. Don't care too much for what people talk about you. So really, when you fall, and I've fallen many times, I'm not thinking about what will the world say. I'm not thinking about, oh my God, what are my parents going to say? Oh my God, what is this one going to say? I'm thinking, oh damn, I've fallen. How do I pick myself up? How do I fix this? How do I learn from it? And then part of it is my own work, right? About really self-introspection, awareness, being very vulnerable and conscious about the mistakes I have made, parts of my personality that I don't want to repeat, and really learning from them and trying to get better. And I think any process of self-improvement requires great vulnerability, but with that comes great courage, and with that comes great perseverance.
Lovely. So, Ameera, keeping in mind that Metropolis Healthcare has been an investor-backed company from the very beginning, how do you perceive the role of investors while making the long-term decisions for the company's growth as a founder and the leader? What attributes do you think that the investors look for while planning to invest in any healthcare organization, and how does it impact the founder?
I took a decision to bring in an investor around 2006, early on. And honestly, not for any other reason, but because at the time, we wanted to acquire other labs. We obviously did have the capital internal accruals to do it on our own. We were profitable, but we didn't have enough to go and acquire other businesses. And at the time, and even today, raising debt to do acquisitions is a challenge from banks. Today, of course, you have NBFC, so it's a little bit more possible. But otherwise, in those days, it wasn't the case. So really, the only options were to go to a private equity and say, hey, put some money in, which I can then use to grow. And that's how we got onto the private equity bandwagon in 2006, probably one of the first in our industry. I think I find a lot of promoters in India, not the new generation of it, but older generation, looks at sort of private equity money as some sort of a free, either it's an entitlement or sometimes it's a freebie. And it's neither, right? It's a liability in a way from a financial perspective that you've taken somebody else's money. And there has to be the very strong moral compass of saying, I've actually taken somebody else's money. I've promised them a return. I have to give it back, and I have to give it back with the return, to do my best ability to give it back in that way. Because what people don't realize is that's how reputation works. First time you take money, you pay it back, the investor makes money, the reputation spreads, hey, the investor made money because of Metropolis and Ameera's hard work. Then the next time around, you'll have 5 investors who look good. and better quality ones. So, a lot of it is about living up to our commitments, being fair, not chipping people, going back to doing things the right way. And I think then investors are very interested in investing in businesses where promoters are being fair, ethical, genuinely having aspiration to grow and wanting to do things in a way where they're willing to learn. Again, one thing I think about often sometimes about promoters is we think we know it all and we think we know exactly what's happening in our business and nobody can teach us anything. And that's 100% not true, because often people who are sitting on the outside have perspectives which have a lot of value to add. And being open and wanting to hear and wanting to learn can really make the institution much stronger, because the biases that we have on what we believe remain blind side spots for us unless you allow somebody else to point them out.
So, Ameera, what makes a good leader?
I think different things make different leaders depending on the organization. But I think generally, if I was to say, my style of leadership is about being flexible and giving people what they need. So, for example, I don't believe one style of leadership works in every situation. Sometimes my own team, the same person, requires me to be tough. Sometimes they require me to be really soft. Sometimes they require me to be emotional. Sometimes they need me to be analytical. And I think it's about giving people what they need when they need it. And having that flexibility in your own mind to adapt and understand the other person and what they need. Often we deal with work, only work. We don't often take the time to understand the people behind the roles. And often when we do that, we ignore huge parts of what makes them tick. And then you're not able to connect, and you're not able to connect authentically. And those people don't often stick around with you long term. So I would say my style is about building more of an emotional connect. But for me, humility is very important. I don't connect well with people who are not humble. I find it very difficult. For me, that learning ability is very important, which comes from humility. And I think what's very important is a sense of reasonableness, being fair and reasonable to each other and having that respect for each other. I think if those value systems are common, I can work with any type of person. The performance, the content, the merit, all of that can be trained. But the value systems are fundamental.
I think that's very beautifully articulated, Ameera. Now, Ameera, Metropolis is a multinational in a true sense. You have presence in Africa and other countries. What are your plans on international expansion? What do you think are the challenges that you are facing in that journey, and what is it that you're doing about it?
The international journey has been an interesting, exciting one. Lots to learn. People may say, oh, similar business model, but the work cultures in different countries are different. The macro environments are different. You get all kinds of shocks which you don't realize in your own country because the challenges are different. And honestly, I think, I've always been very open about the things we've done well, the things we've made mistakes. And honestly, I would 100% say that one of the mistakes we made very early on was actually make our structure too complicated by going into too many jurisdictions and countries very early on, when as an organization we were not mature enough to handle it. So I always, when I'm mentoring and helping younger organizations, I always tell them, keep your structure simple. Don't complicate. Don't add too many tax jurisdictions, legal jurisdictions. The further you are away from your heart, which is your headquarters, the harder it is to handle. So I would say that's a mistake we made then. And then we actually exited most of those international expansions we did between 2005 and 12. And then the international entries we made post 2012 have been very thoughtful, have been conscious, have not been opportunistic, but strategic. And I think often when you're a small firm and sometimes you get an opportunity to say, oh, you can add 30 crores to your revenue, get very excited and you don't think too much. And you just jump on the opportunity and go do it. And I think those are then land up sometimes being mistakes. So I would say the international journey, which we did from 2012, which is the current projects that we have in Africa, have been very conscious. We've been, I would say, the only Indian organization in diagnostics that has had the ability and skill to go and establish in these countries as a brand. And today we are the number 2 player in Africa, in a short period of 8 years. And we've done everything, built everything ground up. It's not like we went and acquired some institution there. We built everything ground up. So I'm very proud of our team, what we've been able to do. But I think it again comes from the culture of not feeling like we know it all, but going to each country and learning ground up.
Ameera, the diagnostics business has traditionally been an illness-based industry, where somebody was unwell, they went to a doctor, and doctor would recommend the tests that need to be done. And that is when somebody would land into a pathology lab, and that too, the one recommended by the doctor. Now, COVID happened, and post-COVID, we've seen D2C companies coming into play in this particular space. And while the sector has grown, it has also created price pressures which have impacted the margins. Where are we headed?
First, I want to clarify some facts. I think there's a lot of perceptions around diagnostics out there which are not all true. So let's first clarify. I think the first part of your statement is true, and it continues to be true, which is that when patients get sick, they go to their doctors. They do go by the recommendation of the doctors, and that continues to be true even today. COVID has not been some amazing catalyst which has completely changed consumer behavior 360 degrees, right? That's not true. Today, if you're sick, then it depends on the kind of illness. You have cancer, you have a stroke, you have a heart attack. You are not making your own decisions. You are not checking on who's giving you a promo code and who's giving you a coupon code of 50%. You're actually going to your doc and your doctor's recommending where you're going to get the best quality diagnostics. You're following that and you're getting your treatment, right? So that continues to be the case. What you're referring to is the new D2C health tech players that have come in on the wellness side and who have started to build a new category, which is wellness, which is direct to consumer, and telling consumers, hey, I'll give you this much discount, I'll give you this service, I'll do this, that. Now, this is a new category and not to be confused with the illness category. So in the wellness category, you're 100% right. There has been a lot of disruption, but that category is new. Actually, it was less than 5% of healthcare pre-COVID. Post-COVID, it is expanding, and it's expanding in a very consumerized way. Now, the pricing pressure that you're talking about is happening there, not in illness. The decision-making by patients is happening there, not in illness, right? And if you actually see the so-called margins that have come down of diagnostic companies have not come down because of pricing pressure, because of health tech. They have been impacted in the last 1 year because of three things. Number one, we were all carrying a lot of COVID cost because we had all ramped up for COVID. And when COVID suddenly stopped, we all had a lot of costs of that, which had to be let go, which all took us a couple of quarters to do. That was number one. Number two, a lot of new competitors have come in on the illness side. So the competitors who've come in on the illness side are all trying to build highly discounted B2B businesses, not of great quality, not sticky, but just sort of spoiling the market. Now, this is actually causing pricing pressure on the margins for intermediates, not actually for the customer. So customer pricing is not coming down, but the intermediate margin is going up. So that's the place where there's some pressure. But the biggest pressure is actually coming from the dollar appreciation, because dollar has gone up so much, and 80% of our ingredients for best quality firms actually are procured internationally, where there is a dollar in euro impact. So it is more the cost pressure that's happening on the cost base rather than on the competitive pressure base. But there also, if you see from Metropolis, we are still operational margins at the 27% margin that we were at pre-COVID. The only reason it looks at 25.5 currently is because we have done a huge lab expansion this year, which we had not done in 1920, which is diluting our margin temporarily by 1.5%. But otherwise, operationally, we are at the same numbers as before.
So, Ameera, as and when newer players are coming in, the competition is disrupting the business models. I mean, there are various business models that have emerged. So there's a hub and spoke model, there is a hyper-local model. And as I understand, what is very sacrosanct in the diagnostic space, especially the pathology, is the ensuring the quality of sample is maintained. And is the second challenge is that there's collections, home collections that are there, and then you have ThyroCare, which is collecting samples from across the country and bringing it to one central lab. Do you think this model is working, and what do you think is the right model, and how is Metropolis using technology to ensure the quality of samples and the outcomes that are there?
I think the only model that works in pathology, if you want to do a large number of a variety of tests, see, you can be a hyper-local business in one city and only do common tests, and through certain kinds of models you can survive. But if you are a pan-India player like Metropolis, where you are a pioneer in test menu, we have 4,000 varieties of tests, and we are the go-to for every other hospital and lab. In that model, the only model that works is hub and spoke. There has been no disruption in that model. There are many who are trying to copy the model. Succeeding or not is a different story, but there are many who are trying to copy the same model. Right? Now, collecting samples from across the country, bringing them to one location or multiple locations is doable. Practically, it's doable. But there are 2-3 things to keep in mind. The most important thing about transportation of samples is the cold chain, is the way it's transported, how long it's transported for, and what condition it's transported. Unfortunately, in India, in a framework of zero guidelines and zero policies, the government has completely left it open and given no boundary conditions for anybody to work, which means there are no minimum standards, and any Tom, Dick, and Harry can come into the industry and just start doing pathology with the consumer having no idea what's happening behind the scenes. And this is really scary for patients because, like you said, somebody may transport samples in a bus, in a dusty bus, from one village to a district headquarter and then fly it across. And that sample has been sitting under heat and rotting and is probably completely spoiled by the time it reaches the lab and can't give an accurate report. Now, who's monitoring this? Who's checking the minimum standards? There is no accreditation that's mandatory. So it's a really sad situation today that everybody can sort of operate without minimum standards. For us, I think the way Metropolis has built our brand over the years is with 2 fundamental thoughts. One is our culture, where we say, look, we tell every employee, that's how we train them, that treat every sample like it's your own mother's sample. And that is the culture you have to follow, that you will take the utmost care on every single facet, right? You find there's not enough blood, you will not take a shortcut. You will find the blood is damaged, you will not take a shortcut. If there is a cheaper chemical, you will not replace it. If you find that there is a quick way because you're in a hurry to go somewhere, you will not do it. So our training is so thorough on precision being close to 100% and 99% not being enough. That's the kind of culture we built. Because I'll tell you, technology can play one role. But in an industry which is not fully automated, it's only partially automated, and where manpower and human expertise plays a very important role. You cannot use technology to become the boundary for everything. It comes back to people and the culture, the training, the processes, the systems. And I see even good quality brands, which you would otherwise trust for many things, who don't know what they're doing in pathology and actually giving incorrect reports to patients, really sadly, and patients making treatment decisions on it. So I just really hope that the government does step in to put some boundary conditions to safeguard patient safety, which is a big concern.
So, Ameera, since you brought up that manpower and trained people, so when you look at tier 2 and tier 3, there aren't enough trained pathologists available there. Do you think technologically with AI and are we making some headway there so that we don't actually have to transport the sample to a city? And with AI and high quality lenses, we could get a near vision to understand the sample. Is that something which could be a reality?
Absolutely could be a reality for certain tests. So again, like I said, not all of pathology is automated and shouldn't be. And AI cannot replace doctors. AI can replace doctors on certain tests, but on certain tests, AI has to be used by doctors to improve their diagnosis. I think often we all make a mistake of thinking technology can replace human expertise, and honestly, it cannot, completely, not in science yet. So how does it aid the doctor to have more collective wisdom, beyond their own experiences, is I think where AI can play a powerful role. Having said that, our government bodies and regulation is not actually going in that direction. To give you an example, NABL today, which is an accreditation body in India, not only insists on a pathologist for every lab, but that pathologist of one lab cannot sign a report for another lab of the same company. So today, on one hand, we are talking about technology, scaling, AI, but on the other hand, our rules and regulations in the accreditation bodies are moving to more hyper-local, right? So these two have to be aligned, otherwise no innovation can happen. right? So, in organizations which standards are set, there should be an encouragement to say that, look, certain tests, yes, need to be seen physically, but many tests can be driven, in a more centralized basis using good quality technology.
So, Ameera, a large part of the diagnostics industry is still unorganized. You have the mom and pop stores which are there. But this seems to be changing. The acquisitions are happening, the SOPs are brought into place. What does the future of the diagnostic industry look like?
Still about 85% of the market is unorganized. And while there are some acquisitions happening, largely it is still unorganized. It's taken 20 years to move from 0 to 15. Investors keep hoping and expecting that this rate of organization will be faster. But honestly, in medical and healthcare, that looks difficult. It's the same thing in hospitals. I mean, if you look at the top chains of hospitals, again, only 10-15% is controlled by the top hospitals. But one change that has happened during COVID is that the labs and the hospitals that were more visible during COVID in terms of vaccinations, in terms of COVID treatment, in terms of testing, like that was out of the 300,000 labs in India, about 2,000 did COVID testing, right? Those 2,000 in those 2 years became more prominent. So what we are seeing is that customers who are going to the other 298,000 odd are moving some business to these 2,000. So it's getting consolidated from that angle because they became, and the same thing is happening in hospitals, right? But this journey is a slow one. It's not going to be some rapid hockey stick that happens overnight, but it is a slow change that is happening. And we are seeing very small labs across the country not able to survive anymore. Many of them are shutting down, and many of them are saying, look, how do I combine with somebody much larger? I think the way of the future is 100% going to be consolidation. But I think, unfortunately, the private sector is very divorced from the reality of the public sector values. And we are not seeing alignment there yet. So I don't see deal making happening a lot in the next 1 or 2 years unless the private sector comes back to some sort of ground on saying, where is it that the ecosystem makes money and not just one individual? A couple of deals happened during COVID where every promoter now thinks, oh, I also want to sell at some ridiculous price. But what they don't realize is that when you are a seller which sells at a ridiculous price, there is a buyer who doesn't make money. And that doesn't leave a strong legacy for you and your company. And there will be destruction when you exit. So that's not a good situation for anyone.
Got it. Ameera, another aspect that I've seen grow is the acute care testing, and especially with genomics coming in, you have specialized genomic players who have come in. A lot of cancer hospitals are now investing in genomic testing. How are companies like you, for whom genomic testing is a very logical extension, reacting to this?
So we've been doing genomics and genetics for years together. It's just that it's more in the headlines nowadays. So it seems like it's something very different and new. But look, the future of healthcare a lot is going to be based on each of our DNA. I mean, today, for example, when any of us has a headache, we all take a Combiflam, you take a Crocin when you've got fever, etc. It's not based on your DNA. Everybody, we are taking standardized medicines, we're eating standardized food, we've got standardized tests, standardized treatment. Everything is the same for everyone. And the future of healthcare is going to be all about personalization. It's going to be, Harbinder has this DNA. These drugs work well on him. These drugs don't. This kind of food suits his body, his DNA. This doesn't. This kind of medication will be custom built for him and personalized for him. Treatment will be custom built for him based on his DNA. And I think that's the direction we'll go in. And that's how we will see aging really get impacted. And the life age that we look at now being 80 or so, of course, it's still 65, 70 for the average, but I'm saying for most healthy people, it's now become 80, is how in the next, obviously, many years, it will go to 120 or so, right? So science, as it moves forward, things become more personalized, people take more care of their health. All of these things will tremendously increase the age span for all of us.
Ameera, my next question is related to the programs that you run. So you have launched an online social platform for women entrepreneurs for helping them start their ventures. Keeping in mind your journey since 2001 in healthcare space, is there a radical switch in women leadership in healthcare and in today's world compared to what it was when you started off in? 2001?
I would say it's incremental, but not radical. Today, for example, there used to be the same 20 of us on every magazine, on every, cover, every listing, etc. And that has expanded, and that's wonderful. We are seeing D2C firms, a fair number of women as entrepreneurs who are building good companies and who are coming into the limelight, which is wonderful to see. So I would say there's definitely been a shift. We've got to again separate professionals from entrepreneurs. Even 20 years ago, in fact, I would say on the entrepreneurial journey, there were hardly few of us who would be considered in that list. There was a Kiran, there was myself, there was the Reddy sisters, there was Zia, there was a handful of women who would be considered in that list of entrepreneurship. And then there was the whole list of professional women, the banker women, and all of them who were always there in the limelight, right? So today, I would say on the entrepreneurship front, we've made big leaps. You see far more entrepreneurial women today than you saw 20 years ago. On the professional side, I would say it's more incremental. Today, still you see in senior leadership, you don't see a fair number of women being represented. You see still a lot of women falling out of the workforce. In fact, post-COVID, it's become even more acute. A lot more women fell out of the workforce. It was a far leaky bucket during COVID than it has been before. Because I think fundamentally as a society, while we have evolved, men in the society have not radically changed. So the expectation that a lot of men and families still have is that my wife can work and we'll be a double income family. But primary caretaking of the house and the kids and the parents and the in-laws is still on her. So this poor woman is collapsing under the pressure of now doing everything she did before and working and trying to find a way to keep her mental health while she does everything. So I think that is not necessarily a healthy thing. So while we may feel there's more equality, real equality will come when men are playing an equal role in the caretaking of their own parents, the wife's parents, the children, and the home. And that's truly when we will have a more equal society, not what we have today. And I really hope that with talking about this more and more, this becomes over time more and more of a reality.
I absolutely wish for that to happen. And Ameera, is this program only about entrepreneurship within healthcare, or is it not restricted to healthcare?
It's not restricted to healthcare at all. Empowerist, which is my platform, is all about, urging women to dream, urging women to think big, aspiring big, and not feeling like they have to choose between this common question asked to all of us of work and life, as if life does not include work, And I think, about how do you manage and how do you balance it? Because men have the same challenge, how do you spend time with your kids and how do you work? It's a problem we all have. It's not a female problem. So, I think it's about encouraging women to dream and then giving them and helping them empower themselves, not only with skills, not only with abilities, not only with mentors, but with confidence. And what we forget often is women in India from a very early age are not equipped with confidence by the communities because they're always told about how they need to be, how they should be, how they should think, what they should do, and too much of should, not enough of want. And in that, it actually kills the woman's voice and her confidence. So Empowerist is all about women's confidence and helping you build the confidence to do whatever you want.
So, Ameera, actually, I think what needs to also happen is not working on breaking the stereotype of what a woman can do or cannot do. I think a lot of work needs to also happen breaking the stereotype of what a man can do and is not expected to do. I think that's the education that needs to happen. That's a brilliant initiative, Ameera. Ameera, you've also launched a MedEngage program. I was reading about it a few days ago when you got the press release. Where you offered scholarships to 250 medical students. Can you share the thought and the intent behind doing this?
This whole idea started about 5-6 years ago, where we were thinking, look, for us, doctors in India, we see the kind of work they do. We see the hard work they do, how they compromise their families, how they really prioritize patients. And it's a tough job, and it's a tough job to do lifelong. And everybody expects doctors to be superheroes And sometimes superheroes fall, and sometimes they need help and they need support, right? So our way of Metropolis, way of giving back to our community, which has helped Metropolis so much, is all about saying, how can we nurture the next generation of medical talent coming out of it? How can we provide them opportunities? How can we provide them with knowledge? How can we provide them with scholarships? How can we provide them with training to help them become better and stronger, and therefore encourage more people to become doctors in India? Well, let me tell you, nobody in the next generation wants to become a doctor. So it's really about nurturing that next generation. So that's how we started MedEngage. And initially we started by, I think, giving 15, 20 scholarships. We got some few hundred applications across the country. We chose deserving students. We gave them observerships. We trained them. We gave them internships. And over time, it's now escalated where we've had a few thousand applications from 500 universities and colleges all across the country, coming from Shillong to, down to the deep south. And we gave 250 scholarships this year. So it's been something very close to our hearts, of really being engaged with these parents, their kids with their parents, and really seeing how, with a little bit of support and help, these medical students really blossom. And hopefully they bring great innovation and great energy to our medical needs for the next 20, 30, 40 years.
So, Ameera, with the kind of work that you're doing, I'm sure you're a busy woman. And but do you take time out for yourself? And if you do, what does Ameera Shah do when she's not working on Metropolis?
So 3 years ago, when I was not obsessed with Metropolis, I was playing sport, I was playing chess, I was spending time with friends, family, loved ones, travel, reading. I like sailing. These are all the hobbies. Camp trekking. These are all the things that I enjoy doing. So you would often find me playing volleyball or tennis at the club, as a sport, etc. 3 years ago, I had my little baby Karma. And now my two obsessions are Metropolis and Karma. The last 3 years have been quite insane, because obviously running a healthcare business in the midst of a COVID crisis and having a newborn baby was not an easy feat to balance. It's been an incredible time. But now I would say he's now 3. So therefore, it again gives me the space to continue to pursue Empowerist in a bigger way, to spend more time in philanthropy, to spend more time, again, playing sport and taking care of my own health, and doing things that are also for my own interest, like reading again. So some of these things came to a bit of a slowdown, I would say, in the last 3 years, because the priority shifted to family, and not just Karma, but also taking care of my parents, taking care of my in-laws, really internally focused to family, I would say. And now we can again become a little bit more external.
Lovely. So before I let you go, my last question to you, Ameera, is that you became an entrepreneur at the age of 21, and now you're running a program where you are, inspiring women to become entrepreneurs. What is your success mantra for the young entrepreneurs? And I'm not even talking about women entrepreneurs. I'm talking about entrepreneurs.
I would say 3 things. Number one, find your value systems and stick to them. I would say that's very, very important. In the journey of entrepreneurship, it's like becoming a parent. The child is going to put a mirror to your face, the same way your organization puts a mirror to your face. And it really tells you your strengths and weaknesses, the things you can be better at, things you can do differently. And it's an opportunity to introspect. It's an opportunity to become better. So for that, your value systems need to be strong. And you need to be able to do this journey feeling true and authentic to yourself. So I would say that's number one. Number two, put aside your ego. And when I say put aside your ego, it's very important, because I find, lots of people responding to everything from an ego standpoint. Oh, I want to have a huge building which has my name. Oh, I want to have a boat. Oh, I want to have a this. I want to have a that. It's all about what I want. It's less about what I'm going to give. So really focusing the energies on what problems I'm solving in the world, what impact I'm having on society, and not what I'm becoming great at, or I'm getting credit for, or I'm on the magazine, or I'm getting this award. I think if that shift happens to what you give versus what you take, I think that builds much better institutions. I would say is the second. And third, I would say is this is a long-term game. This is not a short-term game where you're trying to be the first to reach something. It's about how do you build something of the best, pursue excellence, rather than quick money, and look at it from a long-term institution. Those would be my three.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and you're living this message. I mean, it's not just talking about it, because we've seen you build an institution which has been built by doing the right thing, having a purpose behind doing it, and helping create a legacy, for something that you truly believe in giving, and it's not taking any shortcuts. And you've lived that life. Ameera, I thank you so much for taking out time to speak with me today. It has been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me, and really wishing all the luck to everybody in healthcare out there, and thanking them for everything they do.